I was rewatching some of McCartney 321 last night, and that is an incredible watch. I don't think it's possible to be a music fan and to not just love hearing that man talk about those songs and your infectious enthusiasm for unpacking them, and your curious questions. He's clearly responding to you. It's just such a gift to the world, that little 6-episode series. That's me as a fan talking, of course.
Yeah.
What did you get out of that experience, Rick?
It was like a dream. I can't believe it. I'm glad it was filmed, because I wouldn't have believed that it happened. I would have thought that I dreamt it. It's a lifelong Beatles fan. I love the music more than anything. They're by far my favorite group. And to hear Paul tell the stories of how things happened, and to be able to hear those stems that hadn't left Abbey Road before, it was just spine chilling. Couldn't believe it. And at first it was intimidating, but as soon as the music started playing, the music takes over, and I could feel he loved it as much as I did. He's a fan of it as much as I am, and that's the way it works. It's like the people who make these things, we're making it out of love. It's all fandom. Whether you're in the audience or whether you're making it, you're making this thing that you love, and then you get to share it. And once you've made it, and now especially, I don't know, in the Beatles case, 50 years later, I don't think that Paul has much opportunity. I don't think he's ever gone back and listened to individual stems before. Why would he? He's always moving forward. He's always making new music. So it allowed him to experience, when you hear one part, something, it could open a door in him that hasn't been opened in 50 years. And that's really exciting. And I think he was surprised by it, that his reactions. I don't know, but he seemed genuinely excited by what he was hearing and really having fun.
Yeah. You said the word intimidating a minute ago. Why? Unpack that. Say more about that.
There are certain artists who are so great, and I think of Paul as one, I think of Neil as one, that I remember the first time I got to see Paul McCartney playing live. It was in a stadium, 70 or 80,000 people, and he came out and he started whatever the first song was, which was a classic Beatles song, I can't remember which one, and immediately I started crying then, and I couldn't believe that the person who made the music that I've been listening to since I was a tiny child, that person walks the planet. How can the person who wrote and sang those songs that have been so ubiquitous in my life, how can he exist? Because in my world, the Beatles are a myth. It's mythology. It's Mount Olympus. So the idea that, and this is not even meeting them, this is just being one of the 80,000 people hearing them sing.
Yeah.
It was completely overwhelming. So now, years later, it's the initial feeling is always like, oh, it's that guy who did all those things. But then very quickly you realize, when I meet young artists, sometimes they treat me like with some trepidation, and I always say it's fine. We're all just people. It's all fine, and we are all just people. And it turns into that fast. But when you first meet someone, the legend looms large.
Yeah.
So it looms large. It looms large with Neil. It looms large with Paul, and there are a bunch of artists where it's just like, you can't believe it.
I'm kind of thrilled to hear that, because you've worked with so many great artists, and I guess, at a certain level, whether it happens quickly or it takes a while, you realize they're just people trying to do good work, and as a producer, you're trying to help bring that out of them. But yeah, I'm thrilled to hear that you had that with Paul. And there's some moments early on in the series where you're sitting cross-legged on the ground. Paul is there with an acoustic guitar showing you how certain songs go. And knowing that you are a lifelong Beatles fan, I was wondering if there was times during those moments in particular where it's almost like the teacher-student kind of thing. He's on a high, you're on a low. Were there moments where you were momentarily transported back to your childhood, where you were just studying those records and absorbing them into your life?
That was an amazing moment, because nothing that you see was planned. Nothing that happened was planned. So he volunteered to play something, and that's where the guitar was. So he went there, and he sat down in the chair to play the guitar, because the guitar didn't have a strap. So naturally you would sit. And I was standing, and it felt awkward. I just felt awkward standing up with him sitting and playing. So I moved some stuff around and sat on the floor, because it just felt right for us to be closer. I didn't want to be looking down on him. And then it felt like the student watching the teacher, and it wasn't intentional, but clearly that's what happened. And it's what meant to be, because it's what happened.
Yeah. I also just loved how you were grilling him on the bass line for something. Like you isolated the bass stems, and you're like, dude, explain this to me. I don't understand. How did this come to be? I just loved how, clearly curious and befuddled you were. And he was like, I don't know. It's just what felt right on the day.
Yeah, because if you listen to the song without the bass line, it's a very simple folk song. But the bass line makes it the Beatles something, and one of the greatest songs ever recorded. And the bass is doing the work of a whole orchestra. And I never heard anyone play bass like that before.
Yeah, that series is a gift, and I'm pleased that it had an effect on you. And just curious, was that film all in one day and kind of cut into little bits and pieces?
2 days.
Gosh.
It was probably, I think there's 9 hours of us talking.
Incredible. How do you think about those 2 days in hindsight?
Still, hard for me to believe that it exists. Again, I'm happy that there's a record of it.